Article 2 for our People's Bill of Rights. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed, period. And, this is pretty self-explanatory, and this is another unalienable right. All of our rights are unalienable. Unalienable meaning we can't give them away, meaning they're your fingers or your nose. You're born with them. You die with them. You can't contract them away. You can't get rid of them because they're absolutely a part of you. But as we see every day, the move is on to remove our liberty teeth, to take our guns away from us. And why would they want to do that? Why would they want to take our guns, people? Well, let's look at the countries where they've taken the guns, where they've confiscated the guns for the people's safety. In the 20th century, Turkey, 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million slaughtered after they were disarmed. Russia, 1929 to 1953, 60 million slaughtered after they were disarmed. China, 1948 to 1976, 200 million slaughtered after they were disarmed. Cambodia, 1975 to 1977, 2 million slaughtered after they were disarmed. Guatemala, 1964 to 1981, 200,000 slaughtered after they were disarmed. Uganda, 1971 to 1979, 300,000 slaughtered after they were disarmed. Rwanda, 1994, 800,000 people slaughtered after they were disarmed. And we've seen Australia, they had their own little Sandy Hoax over there. And we've seen their people down to bolt action rifles over in jolly old England. You can't even have a knife, and up in Canada, they're the gun controls communists, the international communists who want to do more slaughter and have restricted the guns way back there to the point to where I think you have to leave them at the sheriff's or the constable's office, and you have to have a legitimate reason, hunting and a hunting license, I guess, along with all the permits and permissions from the government to go hunting and take your gun with you. But what we have to make clear here is our guns are not for hunting. Our guns are not for target shooting. Our guns are our liberty teeth. They are to put down a tyrannical government, because our founders, our true founders, the people who wrote the Bill of Rights, not those aristocrats who wrote the Constitution, they're the ones that want to kill us. But those who wrote that Bill of Rights, they knew what was coming down the road. They knew that over in jolly old England, how did they control all the people and make them serfs beneath the lords? It was because they kept them disarmed. That's how they could beat them down. And we got, each day we're going to throw in a little extra, look at something that's happening today. And you don't have to go far to find some attempts at further infringement upon your Second Article rights. Congressman introduces federal gun control legislation. This is from Daily Nexus. Congressman Salad Carbajal, I guess is what it says, of Santa Barbara, introduced a bill in the U.S. House of Representatives on Tuesday that would encourage states to develop more comprehensive gun control laws. Well, the states can't invoke gun control laws, no more than the federal government can. But what they're doing here in California, we talked about this a couple years ago when the real heat got turned up, when they were, I'm telling you, they thought they had Obama in there, and they thought they were going to, get all the pieces put in place to come for our guns, to try some confiscation. You have to have registration. In all these countries where we've seen, that I've just went over here, where we've seen genocide committed upon peoples after they were disarmed, first thing you got to do is find out where all the guns are. And, ideally for them, you just, like in Russia, you just say, just come bring them in. It's okay. We just want to register your guns so that we need to bring them in. We need to look at them. As soon as you hand them over, they take you over the ditch, put a bullet through your head, and you're done for. And that's what they would like to do right here. And I'll tell you what, as far as Australia, England, all of the European countries that have been disarmed, and Canada, they would already be slaughtering those people right now. And it's cowardly is the only word. A shame on them, because we're the only reason they're not being slaughtered right now, because we would come to their aid, and the international communists know it. But shame on them. Australia. They were always, put forth as a strong, independent people that you weren't going to take their guns away from. Shit, them socialists went over there and just took their guns away from them. But we have our second article. And this notion here that the state has any control, well, that's what I was going for here, is they tried on a federal level, and it got shoved back in their face. So we told you people back then. What they will do is they'll go state by state by state, especially places like California and Connecticut and New York, where the communists have strongholds, and they'll put all of these gun control laws, and then they'll infiltrate into places like Colorado, Oregon, and Washington. And they'll put these gun control, these infringements. They're infringements. We'll tell you why they're infringements. I hear they're talking about comprehensive gun control laws. States to develop, introduced on the anniversary of the tragedy of May 23rd, 2014, the Gun Violence Restraining Order Act would incentivize states to allow courts to issue temporary firearms restraining the courts. The federal has zero authority. And why is that so? Because the 9th article tells us so. Let's read that 9th article, people. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That is our Bill of Rights, and what that says right there is you cannot create any authority in that Constitution to touch any of our rights. They're unalienable. There is no exception. You cannot, it's just like we were talking yesterday about yelling fire in a building. There's no exception to the first article either. That's how they get their foot in the door with their lies. The Supreme Court has ruled the Supreme Court has no authority. According to the 9th article, they cannot have any authority. They can't touch our rights. And that's why the 9th article was put in there to lay down the barrier to where you do not come past this barrier. These rights are absolute, and they are unalienable. That means that they're omnipresent. They won't go away. The only way you can take them away is just like the only way you can take your fingers or anything else, I guess, is to put you in the ground. But to emphasize the point, we're going to talk about our old friend Tench Koch, who was a delegate to the Continental Congress, or the Congress of the I guess it would have been 1789, around when they were putting the Bill of Rights together as a single amendment to the Constitution. There is no First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Seventh Amendment, Eighth Amendment, Ninth Amendment, or 10th Amendment. They were articles in a single amendment. And the 9th article was put there in place to make sure that none of it could be changed. It could not be altered. Now, if they wanted to come up and say they want to completely remove the Bill of Rights, they still can't do it because that would be removing our rights, and the 9th article forbids it. Mr. Koch said, who are the militia? Are they not ourselves? And that statement there says that, yeah, we all are the militia of this country. Every person, I don't care. They try to define who we are, but they cannot. Because we are militia in our private world as American nationals. And the government will tell you, they've written statutes and what might have you saying the militia is men from 16 to 65 or 14 to 65. I can't remember exactly what it is. They have no authority. They have no authority in any of it. Every one of us is the militia. And you can say, well, the women, they ain't going to fight. No, but they can poison people, and they can work as infiltrators. If you've never seen the movie Michael Collins, you should watch it. Michael Collins was Irish Republican Army back in like the 30s, and that's when the Queen was the British government was coming down on the Irish. It was Protestants and Catholics is pretty much what the conflict over there is, and the English coming in and just somebody else's country. We're just going to come in and we're going to tell you how to live, what religion you will have, and we're just going to take over your country. So the Irish, they fought them. And one of the techniques they used was just flat-ass executions on the street. And there came a point to where the traitors within the Irish people, the people who were running Ireland for the British were actually traitors to the Irish people. They were Irish, and they ran the police departments, and they oppressed the people for the British monarchs, and so there came a point to where they snuffed them all. The Irish Republican Army went out and just killed them all. And so it was accomplished through leaks within the organization itself. A mole inside the Irish, I guess the highest, the highest police there. I'm not sure what they were called. At any rate, and so the English, they said, we'll bring in our own enforcers. They don't care. I mean, these people with torture, they despise the Irish, and they just want to beat them down, and we'll put our own people in there. We trust our own people. And so they did, and brought their own forces in and took over all the offices, and it was working pretty good for them. They were beating down the Irish, and they were just putting people in jail and telling them, we're gonna be ruling you. But come a day, the Irish, what they didn't remember was, that they were in Ireland, and the Irish, they were the ones that, in one instance, I think the highest guy. The maid, she was Irish. She knew when the guy was standing in the shower and when the door would be open, so somebody walk right in and snuff him in the shower. And then other places on the greens, where the people worked, the common Irish people, they knew where these people were and when they were vulnerable, and they killed them all. And this is why I say don't discount the women or the children, anybody. When we go to war, it's all of us. Any of us can kill some of them. That's our duty to do so. So who are the militia? Are they not ourselves? They absolutely are. Congress have no power to disarm the militia being the people, and this is what Mr. Koch is saying. It's us. It's the people, the body of the people, the American nationals. Their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier. This means hand grenades. This means bazookas. This means rocket launchers. This means an atomic bomb if you can weld one. Every other terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of an American. That is an American national. This is what they're talking about. I'm talking about when I tell you that the second article, like all the articles of the Bill of Rights, are unalienable rights of law that cannot be removed. They are your birthright. You're born with them, and they just can't arbitrarily remove them. That's what the 9th article was all about. You can't touch them. They're mine until the day I go in the ground, untouched. They have infringed, but they've broken the law doing it, and that really is the point. That is the point of the second article. When a tyrannical government comes to take your rights away, especially that right to defend yourself, to keep and bear arms, and that is their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier, when they come to disarm you, that means they're coming to kill you. They're coming to take everything you got. They're already taking everything we've got. It's just that, I don't know. I can't believe our people have stood by as long as they have and watched this go down, but they have. The bottom line is the guns are there to protect your life, your family, your property, and your country. The ultimate power of the sword is not in the hands of either the federal or state governments, and that's what they're trying to tell you today with this article I'm reading here. They're trying to let's look at this. The bill calls for states to implement laws that allow law enforcement to use local gun databases that can't exist because they are an infringement. Assessments from psychiatrists and psychologists, your private information is supposed to be private, and family recommendations to determine if a person poses a dangerous threat. It doesn't matter, of course. Anybody with a gun poses a dangerous threat. A slave poses a dangerous threat to his master if he can get himself armed because he don't want to be a slave. You see how they use open subject matter to try and this is attorney twisters of words talk. The bill calls for states to implement laws that allow law enforcement to use gun databases, assessments from psychiatrists and psychologists, and family recommendations for the government. Now, they're talking here that the government's going to determine whether you're dangerous to them, because that's what we're really talking about here. Are you dangerous to the government? Now, can they do that? Can they do that? The unlimited power of the sword is not in the hands of either the state or federal governments. So they do not have it's not to them to have the guns and us not. It's not to them to decide who can have a gun. The second article tells us who has the gun. They tell Mr. Kent here, Tench Koch here tells us that it is our birthright to have that gun. So they can. This person working for the state that is oppressing us and inflicting tyranny on us can say, "Oh, he's a danger to us, so we can remove his birthright." No, you can't. It is unalienable. And our founders intended that if they tried this, that we shoot them. As civil rulers, not having their duty to the people duly before them. Boy, howdy. Is that what we're looking at today, or am I missing something here? May attempt to tyrannize. And as the military forces, and here again, they're not our military forces. The military has not been our military for, about 100 years now. It has been a United Nations military that we finance, an international gang of thugs that goes around robbing countries. And anybody who thinks that this isn't true, now I got to tell you, you need to read the Constitution, because before we can take an army into the field to war, it has to be sanctioned by Congress. Congress has the power to declare war. Only Congress has the power to declare war. And there hasn't been a declared war in this country since, World War II. And even that, as we've gone over in this program, we've shown that was a complete sham. There was no threat to the United States. There was nobody invading us. This is when they first took our armies to foreign wars to fight for the, kings and queens. As civil rulers not having their duty to the people before them may attempt to tyrannize, and as the military forces which must be occasionally raised. Now, you're talking back in Tench Koch's times. There was no standing army, people. There was never supposed to be in this country. It was a threat to freedom. Even without a standing army, our founders seen it necessary and told us we had to stay armed and ready to fight without a standing army. Now we have a standing army. This isn't a force that was raised to defend our country. This is a United Nations force that we're providing of our blood and our people to the internationals under international control. We're operating under international policy because it ain't law to us. And, one of the things that they're checking on with them people when they go into the services these days is, will you shoot another American? Will you go take the guns? Will you violate that Bill of Rights? Will you go take the birthright of your brother? If you do, get on board, because we love you and we want you and we need you. If you won't, get out the other door. This is, if Mr. Koch could see where we are today, man, I'll tell you right now, he'd be shooting his gun. He'd been shooting it a long time ago. Raised to defend our country might pervert their power to the injury of their fellow citizens. There could be no more perversion. Hell, it's an abomination. What is standing there calling? And, we just went through Memorial Day and all of this glory and war worship, for a better word. Worship of war. Not our wars. This is, all you got is a bunch of thugs going over and taking other people's property in other people's countries, and sooner or later it comes home to roost because they want everything we've got too. Sooner or later, NATO, it'd be like NATO because, it's made up of all these different, that's where the main branch where they, they'll claim that we went to war under NATO, under the United Nations. You have no authority to do so. To do so is an act of treason. It's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of the public trust, but you've done it. We know you've done it. But they'll tell you, NATO, if there was uprising in this country tomorrow, because we do so vastly outnumber the opposition, the infiltrators, the traitors, the people committing treason, these occupiers. We so outnumber them, I guarantee you, people. If we turned on them, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to see NATO brought in, an international force to bring peace, which means for you and I being put in the ground shy of our rights because we're standing on our rights. And after NATO, they would bring the foreign forces in because it's going to be hard to get our people to shoot us. They figured that much out. For all the faults of the stupidity of our people, turning their guns on their own people is not really something they're going to do. But, of course, they filled the ranks of the Air Force, Army, Marines with foreigners. If you're in this country and you want to join up, man. I mean, right now you have people serving in the United States military, carrying guns when they're telling you you don't need one, that are not even citizens, let alone nationals of this country. And this is why in the MS-13 gang members that have been pumped into this country from Guatemala and El Salvador, all of these people, there's a reason for this. The Pope's Little Brown Army being brought into the United States is because they need somebody who will put 40 caliber bullets through American people's heads if we're ever foolish enough to lay down our firearms and leave ourselves defenseless. I went over the list here: Turkey, Russia, China, Cambodia, Guatemala, Uganda, Rwanda, slaughtered because they were foolish enough to put and I'm telling you, could add Australia and jolly old England and all of the parts of Europe, Germany, if they've been disarmed. They would be doing it right now if it weren't for us, because the thing is, we have enough guns to harm other people. We have the largest army on planet Earth, being our citizenry, our armed citizenry, our armed nationals in this country. We are the biggest army to ever exist on this planet. And we're the only thing standing between them and world domination.